Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for Monday, March 25th, 2019. Guess what? HurricaneTrack.com is 20 years old now. March 11th, 1999 is when I purchased the domain name, and I actually had another domain that year in 1999 called HurricaneNinety9.com. And it's missing some of the graphics for the top part of it here, but at the Wayback Machine, as it's called, at Web Archive, they store 351 billion web pages or something like that. And HurricaneTrack, and of course back in 1999, as you can see there, it was called HurricaneNinety9.com, has been archived. So there it is. This is how it all started 20 years ago. That's pretty remarkable. These are some of the headlines. This was in October that they first archived it. That year we had, of course, Hurricane Floyd. The format of the site. You know, I was doing this blogging stuff even back then, what we now know as blogging. It's not like I started it, but isn't it funny how, now that's a regular thing. People actually get paid to be bloggers. So I was doing blogging, and I would post little tidbits of information, and now we call that Twitter. So maybe I was on to something back then. But this is what the format looked like way back in the day, and it's come a long way since then, right? So let's move ahead in time and just look at wherever this takes us. It's like Back to the Future. All right, so this was in 2005, April the 4th. And at this point, they were saving pretty much every element of the web page. There's my smiling face there. And, hey, at least now I weigh about what I weighed back then. I put on like 45 pounds in about 15, 18 years, and I lost it all since December. So I actually look like that again. It's great. I've lost about 43 pounds since December. And some of you have mentioned seeing that and noticing that on the YouTube comments. I appreciate that. Got to stay healthy, right? No better time to do it than now. So anyway, this is what it looked like back then in 2005, before that big season, of course. And we were getting ready to launch this whole idea of doing live video. I called it HurricaneTrack TV back then. We had a webcam. It was just an image that updated about once every minute or so. That soon went to full live video by the summer of 2005. We had our 2004 DVD and all sorts of other little things on the side here. But this just goes to show you how it's evolved over time, skipping ahead into the space-time continuum down to 2011. And the site became more streamlined. The blog got more, what's the word I'm looking for, in-depth, as I expanded my knowledge and my experience on how to write and talk about things and explain things to people. This was 2011, like I said. And this is the age of the iPhone and the iPad, and our good friends over at Hurricane Pro and Hurricane HD were offering their app at this point back in 2011. I think they started, maybe 09, 2010, somewhere around there. I have to check and see with Eileen. They no longer offer this app, unfortunately, but nevertheless, this is what it looked like back then. And we had different sponsors back in the day. You noticed Lowe's earlier. This was All Road Sat as one of our corporate sponsors. Underwriters is a better way to put it. So skipping ahead again, let's just see where we go. This is 2014, it looks like. And now we were using WordPress at this point. I was using WordPress, and we had the modern look to everything. Sprint was a big partner of ours. And hey, there's the dry air in 2014. How about that? And then we had an app. Yeah, all right. That came out in 2012, and it's still around. Hurricane Impact on iOS and Android. That was 2014. And then skipping ahead, let's see what we can find here. October, September, looks like, let's see where this takes us. September of 2018, if this will load. Hurricane Hector, that's what I was talking about. Looks like August 9th, 2018 is where we jumped to. And the format basically has remained the same for the last few years, since about 2012, using WordPress as the blogging platform. Very streamlined overall, and that's where we have come. How far? Since 1999, 20 years. 20 years, how about that? And thanks to everybody that's been with me since day one, and all the folks that have come on board in the last few months, few years, few weeks, whatever. It's great to have you on your side of the screen watching and listening to me. From these humble beginnings 20 years ago to where I am now, and all the things we have accomplished and all the people that have helped to get me here. Thanks. I appreciate it. 20 years. It goes by quick. All right. So does 67 days. That'll go by quickly. 67 days to go until hurricane season. And this is not, oh man, you're hyping it up again. This is a reminder, okay? You got to make sure you're ready in whatever capacity you can do so. For some people that means very little because they don't have an income to do it. I get that. But at least think about, you know what? If there is a major hurricane or a major event that's going to affect my area, what am I going to do? Just kind of think about that. That doesn't cost any money. 67 days to go, and hurricane season will be back. And as we know from last year, and even years prior, we can have out-of-season activity in the Atlantic Basin in mid to late May. You never know. It could be earlier than 67 days that things get started. All right, things got started and still going in the southern hemisphere. See if I can draw the equator on here with any accuracy. That's not bad. Northern hemisphere, nothing going on up here, of course. But down here, the leftovers of this tropical cyclone that formed in the South Atlantic. We do have over here Tropical Storm Veronica. And over here, in the southern Indian Ocean off the coast of Madagascar, another cyclone. I think this is called Joanna or something like that. It looks like it says Joanna or Joanna. There's Veronica. And this was a tropical cyclone, but I guess it's downgraded enough so it's just an area of invest now. And I think they called it 90Q or something like that. Didn't give it an L for Atlantic. They gave it a Q. I don't know what the Q would mean, but there you go. Kind of rare to have a South Atlantic hurricane, or not a hurricane in this case, but a tropical system at all. Certainly a hurricane would be very rare. And it's just the way the oceans are, the way the currents are, and how the land masses are distributed, and so forth. So that's a look at the global tropics. Now, for the usual topics that I go over during the off-season edition of our old Hurricane Outlook and discussion, the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index, and let's just look at the graph here. That really tells the tale the best, I think. Pretty steady decline in the 90-day. The 30-day has come up some, but notice that they have basically met in the middle, if you will, and it's pretty substantially low. And if we go back and look at this numerically, the last 90 days and the 30-day are both almost identical, very close to each other at about -6. Pretty close to -7, and that is setting the stage for this El Nino that we have going. It's a weak El Nino right now, but we have to wait and see. This is going to be interesting. Giant area of very warm anomalies. Anomalies are departures from the average or the normal, and that's a pretty large area in the subsurface. Just to get you acquainted, this is the surface of the Pacific out here, the equatorial region. And this is about 450 meters deep, and through buoys strung out across the Pacific, they are, the scientists, oceanographers, NOAA folks, etc., are able to glean this information, extract it from the buoy data, or the Dewey data, the buoy data, and we get an idea of what's happening below the surface. And in this case, a very large area, 6 degrees Celsius right there in the middle. And this will rise to the surface. This is part of what's called an oceanic Kelvin wave, driven by these westerly wind bursts that help to downwell the water, the warm water of the western Pacific, and then through the natural circulation, like a conveyor belt, that gradually moves eastward, propagates is another way to put it, and it surfaces, and the Pacific overall warms. This is somewhat of an oversimplification of it, but this is the best way that I can describe it. And that leads to this abnormal warming at the surface, and you get this El Nino. Now, this is a very strong positive for a fairly substantial El Nino to grow. This is a big question mark right here to me, because these are cold. That's a terrible question mark, but that's okay. These are cold anomalies down underneath this warm area in the Westpac. And then there's this one little area of cold water at the surface relative to average. When I say cold, these are relative to average, okay? Believe me, in the Western Pacific, the water is anything but cold. And then you see this white area where the water temperatures near and at the surface and about 50 meters below are right where they should be. What does that look like on a map? Okay, this is a Mercator projection map of the whole globe, everything stretched out flat. There you go. There's your El Nino signature covering a pretty vast area. I tried to draw a rectangle. And then there's your cooler area way out in the far western Pacific. So this is the area that we really want to concentrate on right through here. And it is warming gradually, a degree Celsius overall. So we're definitely in this El Nino pattern. But notice as we zoom in that the water temperatures north of the El Nino area, the Niño region, they're not all that warm, especially up here off the coast of California, southwest from there towards Hawaii, a little different. And so I'm not sure, I'm not 100% convinced that this El Nino will hold on and strengthen. It may do so for a little bit and then back off. I don't know. That's not a prediction. Do not mistake that for, well, Mark doesn't think there's going to be an El Nino of any significance this year. Well, there already is one. The big part of my apprehension to just latch on and say, oh, look at this, there we go, big time El Nino growing and on its way, etc., as I look at this and I think, well, there's not another one of these developing over here. Instead, there are these cold anomalies lurking below, and I want to see what happens with that. Does this El Nino have what it takes to hold on? And, you know, a lot of people think that it will. I was trying to turn my phone off so it doesn't beep at me again. But I don't know. You know, I'll believe it when I see it. All right? That's, you know, look out the window, look at the weather sometimes instead of just what the models say. And here's what we're looking at. This is the snapshot. And while it is, you know, pretty foreboding of a significant event unfolding, we'll see. And that's the beauty of all of this, is that we can watch it and track it over time. This is just March 25th. Let's see what it looks like June 25th, August 25th, and so forth. Make sense? I mean, we went through this last year and probably the year before. Seems like every year there's going to be an El Nino. In this situation, we already have one, and let's see where it goes. Because on the other side, let me get to this. I know I'm long-winded here, but that's kind of the nice part about this, is you can watch and take in what you want. If you think I'm boring, you can skip ahead. That's the good part about, you know, being able to do this and not having commercials to worry about like television. Anyhow, in the Atlantic Basin, the main development region, that's not too bad of a look. In fact, this area in the eastern Atlantic has warmed over the last week or so relative to the overall averages. And we can see that here on this index from Levi Cowan's site. Now, let me make it clear, this methodology and the CDAS methodology, CDAS, which is right there, those are two different ways of deriving the anomalies based on the background data. It's an anomaly compared to what? What is your base state? Now, they're not that different, you know, to where it's just, you know, like apples and oranges. They're both fruits, but hey, an apple's an apple and an orange is an orange. I think that's a good way to do the analogy, isn't it? But this is a different way. The Noah-Nesdis methodology has a different data set than does the CDAS, the CDAS methodology. Nevertheless, notice what we have. We have this big drop, Oh, look, my color is the same as Levi. We had this big drop back in the heart of the winter, and then it rebounded, leveled off, dropped again. Now, in the tail end of March here, the tropical Atlantic, the MDR, the main development region, slightly warmer on average than it should be. And what's nice, again, as I alluded to, that this map is a different methodology. It's not vastly different, and we can see that difference in the anomalies right here. Yeah, in this box, which is generally the main development region, a good part of it anyway, not very cold relative to average. And this is not just ridiculously warm relative to average. Instead, most of the northern Atlantic here, north of the equator, is at or above normal. All right, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that throughout the hurricane season, which again, only 67 days away. All right, actual sea surface temperatures. Let's take a look at that. I just like to watch this and see how it evolves. I love the color coding they use here. This is your 26 Celsius isotherm, poking up the loop current area into the Gulf of Mexico, down in the Bay of Campeche. Shelf waters are warming. Spring breakers out there. Got to take the wetsuit with you probably because some of these water temperatures, you know, blue and purple typically mean cold as a color graph, a color bar, color, right? And yeah, basically north of Tampa, all the way through the toe of Louisiana down to South Padre and into the coastal areas of Mexico, it is a little chilly. 60s, maybe lower 70s if you're lucky. Southeast Florida, yep, that's where it's at. Florida Keys, Cuba, of course. Cayman Islands, Cancun, water temperatures nice around there. Western Atlantic, water temperatures warming. Gulf Stream, very easy to spot, but the surf temperatures still in the lower 60s at best. And then, of course, up here off the northeast, forget about it. Too cold, even for anybody with a wetsuit, in my opinion. I wouldn't do it. You got a ways to go. But again, you know, really back to the anomalies. Yeah, the only area that stands out is this very warm northwest Atlantic. But this is a changeable time of the season. Let's just wait and see what happens. It's just something to monitor. All right, back to this real quick. I was showing the Atlantic version of this. This is the tropical Pacific version. And we had a pretty big spike here again towards the end of the winter season there, meteorological winter. And then it kind of dropped a little bit, and now it's kind of leveled off. And this particular index, again, based on the CDAS data, about 1 degree Celsius or just under it. You can just round it up. I mean, come on. 0.85, statistically, we just round it up and call it 1 degree Celsius above average. We'll monitor this. It's getting to that time of year where this will start to really matter. Forecasts are going to be made for the upcoming hurricane season. Colorado State University will be coming out in early April at the National Tropical Weather Conference. Dr. Klotzbach, I'll tweet about it and talk about it live on our Patreon page and the app, of course. And you look at this and you say, yeah, he's probably going to call for a below-average season. But again, it's only March, and at that point it'll only be April, and you know how that can change over time. Those seasonal forecasts, those are tough. I've seen where Joe Bastardi at Weather Bell already calling for a generally below-average season, low overall ACE, etc., accumulated cyclone energy, hostile main development region. It just seems like we say this every year from these folks, and I'm not knocking them, but it's so early. I really like the subseasonal stuff better, where we can look at 30 days out and even 45 days with some of these ensemble prediction system advantages that we have through the European, the CFS. You know, those seem to do a pretty good job at picking up 30 to 45 days out these windows of favorability set inside of the larger overall seasonal signal. Anyway, that's just my take on that. All right, lower 48 weather, generally speaking, kind of quiet. This is the map today. Frontal system coming through the eastern part of the country, more storminess out west, but overall, no major severe weather today or the next few days. They had some hail over in this area pretty big thunderstorms last night. But no big worries over the week ahead if we move this forward. Rain in the east, which will help wash some of the pollen out. Pretty cold, high pressure coming down. But you know what? It's springtime, and those high pressure areas aren't as stout as they once were. And even that was mostly up here. A little bit of a low pressure area off the frontal boundary probably, creating some northeast winds right there into the Florida East Coast area. So if you're spring breaking along that East Coast, watch out. Brisk northeast winds off a fairly cold ocean compared to where it will be. You know, could make it a little goosebumpy. Goosebump alert. All right? Who's issuing goosebump advisories? Me, because that's going to happen over the next couple of days here. Let's just back it up a little bit in time. That little low pressure area. This is 42 hours, 48 hours. So 2 days from now, yeah, a little bit brisk along the Florida East Coast there. So just be mindful of that. Waves will probably be choppier, so be careful in the surf. Unfortunately, more heavy precip, or any precip for that matter, is problematic for parts of the upper Midwest, exacerbating those flood problems. Cold enough for snow on the northern part, but no major severe weather outbreaks as we move into the first few days of April. We will watch the deep south for some potential mischief in terms of severe weather, maybe some frozen precip in the southern Appalachians. This is April 2nd. I will be in Texas for the National Tropical Weather Conference at this point. And a pretty decent storm system there in the east, but nothing that week to interfere with what's happening down there in South Padre Island. And this is about 240 hours out, about 10 days. We'll stop here. Maybe you see low pressure coming through Oklahoma. You got to wonder, will there be some severe weather associated with that? And with April comes the threat of that more and more. And I will focus on that, again, keeping people aware, weather being top of mind with all the other things going on in the geopolitical world. Let's not forget about the weather. All right? Well, again, happy 20th anniversary to us, the HurricaneTrack world. I really appreciate all the folks over the years that have been a part of it in so many different ways. Wow, like I said, 20 years goes by fast. It sure does. And hey, maybe we can do it for another 20, and then I'll hang up my hat and call it a career. 20 years to go. Have a good rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in again on your side of the screen. I appreciate it very much. I am Mark Sudduth for the 20-year-old HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again early next week.